So we're now into phase 3 of the rehab process. This week just gone, adding in some monocardio and some core work has been very beneficial. I would say that I am 90% recovered. Mentally, there has been a bit of a block in terms of a fear around exercise, which is quite common when you have such severe pain. Avoidance mechanisms within the psyche start showing up, and that makes you roll in plenty of movement, go back in to do some cardio, and through some kind of very simple light weights around. This phase is just going to get a bit more complex and start to move into some dynamic movement. So we're going to increase the intensity of the core work, moving into things like planks, side planks, being a bit more dynamic with some circuits around kettlebells, getting some more strength within the posterior real chain, and just starting to move a bit more. Now, not super dynamic, not as if we are explosive, but just be more controlled, more movement, so we can start to free up some space and start to get some strength back in the core. I'm also going to be taking you through at the end of this just some breathing exercises that I'll do to help with the ribcage, as well as some core work to help with the building stability back into the body again, where I need to around my ribs and my spinal cord. So if you're not bothered about this, the exercise component, I'll do a talk over the top of each of the exercises that I'm doing just to give some information. But towards the end, you can follow on with some gentle breath work.
So to begin with, we're just starting with a mono warm-up, just getting the heart rate elevated, getting the body warm, the muscles warm. But if you notice, I'm keeping my mouth closed to ensure that we're nasal breathing during this warm-up. Now, what this is going to typically help with is obviously we're going to get circulation around the body. The muscles are actually going to get to the temperature that you want them to be when you're working out. But by increasing the amount of work that we're doing and keeping the mouth closed, we're typically going to increase the amount of carbon dioxide in our body. And what that's going to do is it's actually going to help assist in creating the ability to transfer more oxygen around the body, as well as dilating blood vessels at the peripherals, so in the muscles, dilating the blood vessels in the heart, as well as dilating the blood vessels in the brain. All of these things are going to essentially allow for more efficient warm-up. I'm building my heart rate up here to around about between 150 and 160, starting a little bit lower. The gear on the bike is set around about a 7.5. You can see I'm starting my timer on my watch there to track my heart rate. And yeah, the goal here is just simply to get moving. So we'll fast forward this a little bit and we'll move into the next exercise. Now, I always like to ensure that my fascia in my glutes and in my lower back and at my hip flexors as well just helps to loosen up and roll around, getting some of the tension out of my body. You can see here I'm doing a bit of chiro myself, cracking my back, having a good release there, just to get some movement going, to allow my body to feel as if it can move quite a bit. I am a person who is quite rigid, although my muscles are flexible. I do hold a lot of tension in my lower back, and obviously having an injury, there's been a lot of protection there. So just simply getting on that ball, just finding some congealed spots in the fascia, find a point that gets a little bit tender and just rolling out on that area, just opening it up. And it's really just playful. I'm just playing here, toying around with just being and feeling the body. It really is. It's feeling into those spots that you're like, oh, okay, just need to release that part there, because that's going to allow your joints to glide. Now, I'm going to be getting into some more movement today, more dynamic stuff, and this is just going to allow me to get into good positions, into a good range of motion, and potentially reduce the chance of having an injury. So getting one of these solid balls, just having a little roll around, having a little play, is always something I'll do before a workout. I enjoy it, and I also feel as if it helps prevent an injury myself as well. So now we're just going to go through a bit of a flow routine. Again, just getting some movement in, really. You can see that what I'm doing here is just getting into yoga-like poses. So here we might have a little bit of a lizard pose, just getting some movement, twisting in that back, doing 8 reps either side, and then coming into just opening up the hip flexor. What I noticed there was actually my hip flexor was pretty tense, so I wanted to go into this more so what some people might call a frag, half dragon pose. That is taken from pliability or ROMWOD if you've ever done that before. And then I come back to that hip flexor. And it's just getting some, just simply mobility, movement. This is what I need at the moment. I need to really focus on ensuring that my body is opening up. I'm just not doing enough of that. And it's all a part of the process. Just getting into those spaces that you typically wouldn't. Now, I sit at a desk quite often. How many of you just sit in a desk? How often do you do this sort of movement? Unless you're into yoga or you have a movement practice, it really isn't something that people do regularly. So these poses are taken from yoga, taken from Kung Fu, but also they are poses that are going to help me with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as well. Obviously, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is a game or sport where the objective is to get someone to the ground, then get them to the ground and to submit them, either by choking them out or breaking an arm, or get them into a position that makes the individual really go into a position where they can't do anything other than quit. That means being in some very obscure positions. This is a ribcage stuff, getting some mobility into that thoracic spine. You can see my lower back there wasn't really moving too much, and then we're just going to open up the chest. Again, chest and back, getting a little bit more dynamic with the movements now. This whole time is also what I'm tending to do when I do this warm-up, is starting to become aware of where am I tight in my body. And what I noticed there, as I was actually still pretty tight in my hips and my upper thoracic spine, so I decided just to come into a child's pose and finally sitting up. So I like to start on the ground and then come up to standing, simply because how often do we actually spend being on the floor? Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is a sport of being on the floor, and therefore spending more time on a mat like this and just moving is going to be of benefit to that before we get into what we would say more dynamic positions. This one really felt a bit of a struggle today. My chest was really not tight. I was really pretty tight, sorry. I'm trying to squeeze through my glutes here, and there is just so much tension through my quads as well. And we're going to start coming into a bit of core work, you could say. Watch in a moment what I try to do. This is really showing where my injuries are. I tried to raise opposite arm and legs, and I literally can't. Like my core stability is really poor there, so I decided to stop, just because I'm probably going a bit too advanced for where I am in this phase. Spreading the legs open, just getting into a position again where I can get some of that into the groin area, but also into that lower back that was quite stiff when I was doing the cat-cows. Just seeing whether I can get into that position now of that, getting more mobility in that lower back where the injury actually is. What I like to do at the very end of here is just then start dropping into seeing where I can get into a low squat position on each side. You'll notice on my right side, my heel comes up. My left side, my heel doesn't come up. So that on that right side is where I actually tend to get more of an injury, because I have an impingement in that hip and my calf's tight, so my heel has to come up on that one. So we're into the first core exercise now. I've got a bench, and I'm trying to get 90 on the bench with my kind of heels in. I'm squeezing a ball between my knees here. And what I'm actually doing is I'm taking a deep breath in, filling the lungs, breathing all the way out throughout my mouth, flattening and curving that spine, and then just bringing that core up while squeezing my knees together and then really engaging that core. So this is to help my rib cage. So I dislocated my rib. I can feel on the left-hand side there's certainly a bit of flaring going on, and I do tend to have an anterior pelvic tilt. So therefore, just getting into a position, and if you notice on one of my last videos, the video that I popped out before in phase 2, I actually, when I put my hands above my head, the bottom of my part of my spine started to curve. So what the goal is here is really to keep that back flat on the ground whilst I'm inhaling all the way in. I did notice that I had in this position some limitation in the kind of top side parts of my rib cage. That will just be simply because there is scar tissue in the injury, and I need to continue to work on this. So we moved into a bit more of an advanced position now, similar sort of thing, taking a deep breath in, breathing out, breathing in, breathing out, bringing down the rib cage, and then trying to keep it a bridge whilst the rib cage is in a position aligning with my hips and keeping my spine straight. So this was 8 on each one. And what I did here was 3 reps of 8 on each. So the first exercise, doing 8 there, and then going into 8 of these. And it really did start to engage and switch on that core, which is just going to allow for me when I come into doing the dynamic movements, which we did next, to know that I've got some stability, some activation in that core, which is going to allow me to go through the movements and my core to engage in the appropriate manner when I want it to. Final rep. So what I did here was a round of 4 different exercises. Starting quite light actually, and I didn't really know what to pick up in terms of the weight. So what we have is we have a 16 kilogram dumbbell, and we are just doing some kettlebells. And what I'm focusing on here is keeping my toes pinned into the ground, my hips coming back, and obviously that back straight. But at the top, really pushing through the glutes to get some of that glute activation. This is quite light work. It's not heavy at all. So I think I did 20 of those. And then moving into, I think the next one was single arm overhead lunges. Trying to keep that rib cage down and that arm straight. So again, just working the legs, working the glutes. This was meant to be a session where I'm controlled, but I am the sort of individual who really loves to go with some intensity and go with some dynamic movement. And this here is probably not controlled enough. However, the goal actually is to get through the lunges, but to try and keep, whilst my hand is in the air, single arm is in the air, trying to keep that rib cage engaged, the core switched on, so that we are continuing to focus on what it is we're trying to achieve, which is in alignment with my hips, my core, and my shoulder girdles. I believe I did 10 on each arm, and then we went into single leg Romanian split squat. No, it's not split squat, sorry. Single leg Romanian deadlift. And straight away, I noticed that's far too heavy. 15 kilos, which would usually be typically a little bit light for me for doing those. Straight away, I was like, no, that's going to be too heavy for my back. And you can see, this is 8 kilograms, you can just see again, there's just a real issue with balance here. And this is all stemming from, number 1, my glutes not firing. Number 2, having a fair bit of tension in that posterior real chain. And number 3, just the core just not keeping me stable. And number 4, having not done this movement for a long time. So 8, I believe I was doing 8 on each leg. And this was good. I enjoyed this. It's been now 4 or 5 weeks. There we go, struggling on that right side where my ankle comes off the ground. You can see is much, much worse than this one. I was enjoying this movement. I was enjoying this little circuit here. I haven't done anything like this for a while. So now I'm happy to be making some progress with this. And I'm just focusing on trying to get a little bit more control. I probably could get my left leg out and extend that a little bit further. Now I'm starting to bring my arm in to try and keep myself in a bit more of a stable position. And finally, just going through some frog squats, just going as deep as I can, getting in there and opening up that hip space. And really at the top, pushing through again, making sure that my toes are pinning into the ground and just driving upwards keeping that glutes engaged, really squeezing through the top. And this was, again, a little bit, not challenging, but just starting to feel some kind of work happening. And we did this 3 rounds. So I was actually pretty happy that I managed to get through this, but I did notice my right back starting to get a little bit sore. I debated whether I was going to finish with these or not. I did want to do a bit more core. Again, trying to get that lower rib cage just in alignment by at the top, breathing out, engaging the core, and then going through some of these dead bugs. You see I made an adjustment with my hands there. That is just to try and bring my shoulders around. So when I'm breathing, I'm not breathing up into my chest. I'm actually breathing into the rib cage and the lower portion of my back and keeping my back on the mat and keeping therefore a straight and neutral spine. And these were quite challenging. I was starting to feel right glute and just above the right glute where the injury is starting to be a little bit sore. However, I was willing to take the risk. Feeling it now, feeling good, feeling like my legs have worked, which is great. Also happy with the progress. And then we're going to finally finish up with a bit more cardio, and I'm going to talk you through what I'm doing here. So we are back on the mono now, and this time I have put the gear a little bit lower. So we're down at a 6 now, so the heart rate is probably around about 130, 140. And what I decided to do was start to challenge myself a bit. Take control of my breathing. Again, we're still nasal breathing, but when you're injured, what tends to happen is you lack intensity. I spoke to my chiro about being able to get on the bike and put some intensity in there, but he said just be mindful that you're going to be sat on there, you're going to get some compression in the spine, and if you start pushing yourself pretty hard, then you might have a risk of just tightening up in the lower back. So what I decided is to actually drop the intensity to get some movement in the legs, to get some blood flow in there to finish up a warm up. But now I'm focusing, closing my eyes, and what I decided to do was actually what's called a low triangle, with 4-second inhale straight to a 4-second exhale and a 4-second hold at the bottom. So what I did that for a minute. So that was typically around about 5 or 6 breaths every minute with that pause. And then I did a minute where I'm just recovering with nasal breathing. And this challenged my air hunger, to be honest with you, which was great because I've not done any of this sort of work for a while. So this is not going to be getting me into a hypoxia. Obviously, we are dropping breathing frequency right down here. Carbon dioxide is going to increase. Heart rate's slightly elevated, so we've got quite a bit of arousal in the system. Obviously, we've also just finished a session as well. So air hunger come on pretty fast. And it was, I would say, 4-second hold at the bottom. I would say push my air hunger up to around about 5 or 6 out of 10, which isn't that high. However, then having to breathe in for 4 and out for 4, I was starting to get a few contractions just on the exhale, and that was actually making it a bit of a challenge to control the inhale in for 4, which again is just helping promote breath control. And yeah, so this was 10 minutes of doing this. So we had 5 rounds where we're doing a low triangle to build that air hunger tolerance. What that is typically going to do is going to build your stress tolerance, because air hunger is an affective emotion that is increases stress in the body. It also makes you feel unpleasant. So if you're sat on a bike, you can get a bit more of a challenge out of your workout without actually having to do your absolute load, not having to be so significantly high. So you can still challenge yourself in terms of your respiration, your mental acuity, your mental resilience, whilst getting a bit of a cool down as well. You don't need to be just sat watching me here on a bike, but the goal really here is just to stay as calm as possible in the mind and body. You see my eyes are closed. I'm really going intuitive inside here, just to relax and focus just on that breath. Sometimes it gets a bit challenging. You've just got to bring your mindset into a position where you're just telling yourself to relax and not get caught up on the attachment of when is it going to finish, like I just did there. Eyes open, looking at the time. Is that minute over yet? Because it started to challenge me. Coming back to see whether you can just go through the whole minute. Can you not have to look at the clock? Back to eyes closed again. You don't need to carry on watching me here. I'm going to fast forward you to next, and we're going to finish off with some down regulation breath work, which if you want to, you can join in. So just getting yourself sat down, getting yourself rested, comfortable, closing your eyes, Give your shoulders a bit of a shake off. Deep breath in, breathing out. What we're going to do is we're going to inhale for 5 and out for 5 rounds. So with me, in for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and out for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Back in for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and out for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Breathing into that lower rib cage. Out for 5, 4, expanding, 3, 2, 1, and then contracting on the exhale. 4, 3, 2, 1. So we're expanding out, all the way out and in. Back out for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Just relaxing out. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. This is really just calming us down. Keep that going. We're going to switch over to 5 in, 5 hold, and 5 out. So a top triangle in a moment. But just keep going 5 in, 5 out for now. Really relaxing. Noticing that heart rate coming down. And just letting go. Finish. The workout's over. No need to worry about what's going on around you, the intensity. Just be with you. Right now I was actually feeling really calm, really internal, really relaxed. So in a moment, what we're going to do is we're going to switch into that high triangle. So with me, in for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold there. 3, 2, 1. Out for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So this is just slowing that breath rate down a little bit further. Keep going. And having a little bit pause at the top. And the pause at the top tends to be a little bit easier because you've got more air in your lungs. So it's calming as well. And because of the nature of what an inhale hold does in terms of the pressure in the ribcage and the thorax, it puts a bit of pressure in the heart. It actually helps to slow the heart rate down a little bit more. So a couple of hold, 5 rounds of this. And what we're going to finish off with is we're going to do 5 rounds of box breathing. So keep going in for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold at the top and just let it be. Let it be. Session's over. Heart rate slowing out for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Really enjoy this. Enjoy the calming nature, the relaxing sensations. Now, you've just done a workout. If this is at the end of the workout, I know that I was feeling pretty happy here, watching my thoughts spin by about the day, getting into that state of meditation, observing. And in a moment, we're going to go into 5 in, 5 hold, 5 hold. So with me, in for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Out for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And hold for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So keep that going. What we've done is we've taken you from a breath rate of 6 breaths per minute to around about 4.5 and now 3 breaths per minute. So really just slowing that breath rate down, bringing that arousal down, and gradually you should notice that these boxes are pretty easy. Now, if you do find these boxes challenging, then what you can simply do is, rather than going 5 in, 5 out to begin with, do 4 in, 4 out, then top triangle of 4 in, 4 hold, 4 out, then a box of 5 in, 5 hold, 5 out, 4 out, 4 in, 4 hold, 4 out, and just making the window a little bit smaller. That's going to make it a little bit easier for you if the air hunger is too much of a challenge already, and then you can make progression. And that progression is going to be a sign of your ability to get yourself into a calm state, because we know that air hunger and being able to sit still is about being calm. It's about having low adrenaline in the body, low sympathetic tone, and that makes it a lot easier. Okay, so a few more rounds of this. I'm going to leave you be for a moment, have some silence. Right. So just taking a deep breath in, breathing out, breathing in again, out. Open your eyes. Thank you very much.